Well, hello, everyone. It's Tuesday, March 17, the year of our Lord 2026. We just finished Joshua. Next page, Judges. In many ways, it's a great book. In many ways, it's a sad, sad story of the cycle of sin. It's actually a 325-year period from about 1375 to about 1050. Now, how do we know that? Because 1050 BC, Saul becomes that first king, but we'll get to that down the road. Now, who's been leading the Hebrew people since day one? Well, Abraham, and then Isaac, and then Jacob, Joseph in a way in Egypt. Moses comes into the story, Joshua comes in the story, and now Joshua's gone. Judges 1:1. After the death of Joshua, the Israelites asked the Lord, who of us is to go up first to fight against the Canaanites? In other words, who's the leader in all this of these 12 tribes? They didn't have one. Now you remember, Israel had not taken all of the land that God had given to them. They never will. They're going to fail at that. In fact, as we get to David and Solomon, we'll learn those two, David and his son Solomon, got most of the land, 50, 60%. Israel today has nearly part of that land. When will they get all that land? God will give that to them in the end times. We believe that from the Word. But anyway, they hadn't taken the land. Here's the story. Why? If God promised it to them, why didn't they get all that land? Sin. If they had truly obeyed the Lord, if they had walked Him and let the Lord's strength work for them, they would have gotten all that land, but they didn't. And that's what the first few chapters here in Judges are about. Trying to take that land, but they fail. And you're saying, what's the big deal? Can't these unbelievers live in that area? Yeah, but with that comes their culture, their sin, their women, their sexuality. All that has to do with idolatry. They never did clear that out. You know, when the Lord wants to drive out sin in your life, He wants all of it out. Now think about that. He wants all of it out totally. Now, Judges is an interesting book because it talks about this cycle. And there's actually 6 cycles over the 325 years. It's very simple. It starts out with everybody's in peace, but they start to sin. That's number 1. And then God will put an evil nation in them to control them and make them cry out. He'll punish them in step 2. Third, God will bring up a great judge to bring military and spiritual love to the people. They'll bring victory in step 3, and then they'll be at peace for a while. But what happens? Back to sin again, back to punishment, step 2, back to another judge, step 3, back to revival in step 4. So let's just take a little look at this in a couple of the first Judges. I'm in Judges chapter 3. Othniel is actually cycle 1. Israel did evil in the eyes of the Lord. If you read this book, you're going to see this a lot. Israel did evil in the eyes of the Lord. Okay? And He brings this King Cushan, an evil country, into them to control them for 8 years. And finally, they've had enough. You know, sometimes we'll wait. Sometimes God's going to wait until you hit rock bottom. And then when you say, Lord, I'm crying out, He'll come to your aid. So after 8 years, they do that. Othniel brings the victory, and they have peace for 40 years. Call it somewhat of a revival. It doesn't last. Ehud, the next one. After those 40 years, they fall back into sin. And a Moab king, Eglon, takes over. 18 years before they hit rock bottom. And then victory comes through Ehud. Again, God's using these great judges, almost like a Moses or Joshua. Military, yes. Spiritual love of God, yes. And they have peace for 80 years. And it'll go on. It'll continue to go on. God will use not one person, but these people to be judges. And they are really judges, too. They judge, they're military people, they're people of God. The thing we need to think about as we close out for the day, what kind of cycles do we get? Do we get in that sin pattern and then we finally cry out after we've hit rock bottom. God brings us the victory. We have peace, but then we fall back into it. Let's be very careful about that, okay? Think about that as we continue to talk about that. Have a blessed day. We'll talk about more Judges tomorrow. See you then. Bye.